Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming here. This is kind of an awkward place for me to stand and talk to you guys. My original plan was to stand over there, but then you wouldn't see the slides, and maybe that's a good thing, I don't know. But anyway, just by quick way of introduction, I'm Tom Grogan. I actually helped start the Northeast Florida chapter. I think we did that in about 2007. Under the auspices of no good deed goes unpunished, I got invited to participate at the state board. I want to say back 2008, and I've been in the state board, and I've been president twice. I was president in 2010, and then again last year in 2012. So I've gotten to know a lot of you good people all throughout the state of Florida. It's been kind of fun for me. Quick little bio on myself. I'm actually from the Northeast. I worked in the DC area most of my career. I went to school, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but I went to school at Virginia Tech. So there's always that little animosity between Pablo and some of the other guys and myself. Fortunately, they wouldn't make the football bet this year because you guys could have been wearing Miami clothes tonight, but they wouldn't do it. So, so that's a good thing. But anyway, so most of my career has been working with AE companies. I worked for Bechtel a couple years out of school. Then with a really small AE firm, about 10 people. And then most of my career is with Ellery Beckett. They're big architects and engineers, as most of you I'm sure are aware of. 2003, I decided to do a change, and I took a job with a Haskell company. We do design build. So we have architects, engineers, and construction folks all in-house. And that's been really eye-opening for me because, quite honestly, everybody's focus is the same. And it's about putting together what I think is the best project for the customer. And nobody lets, everybody has to check their egos at the door because we have to be price competitive, we have to meet the codes, we have to do good work. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. Any questions? Okay, so why are you all here? What we're here to do is talk about the Practice Act for Structural Engineering and a Partial Practice Act, which I'll explain as we go along here, for the state of Florida. And I hope that when I get done tonight, and with the questions that you guys ask, you'll walk out of here with a complete understanding of what we're trying to do. And there was 12 apostles at one point, and I'm hoping that you guys will be the next group of folks that when you start getting asked questions, you're comfortable with the subject material, you understand why we want to do it, and you're also very supportive. I'm all about the questions, so you don't have to agree or with everything that I'm saying. I want to be able to answer those questions for you so you walk out of here comfortable. Anyway, so how does this all start? Well, here's the history. Way back in 1700 BC, there was the lovely code of Hammurabi, and that basically, basically gave 3 laws related to the strength of structures. The main one being, if a man constructs a house and doesn't make it strong enough and it causes death, then of the owner of the house, then the person that designed the house also gets put to death. Kind of like the old eye for an eye scenario. So I think as a society we've kind of grown away from that. But we got to get a kick out of that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the history of separate licensing and why it's out there. And we're trying to get away from the use of the word separate. We're just talking about structural licensing. So there's actually a slide I need to update. So the very first Professional Engineers Act was in Wyoming in 1907. Up until then, there was no regulation governing what engineers did at all. And so that's where it all started. So you get a little history lesson tonight. And then in 1915 was the first act that governed structural engineering. The state of Illinois, although they had a PE board, enacted the first Structural Engineers Act, and it was actually predicated out of the big Chicago fire. But basically, their thing actually has in there to keep fools and scoundrels and rascals from building unsafe structures. They had a lot of problem when they did the rebuild. The stuff was going up and it wasn't safe. It was being done so quickly that they knew they had to do something about it. And so that's kind of that's how it is. So the state of Illinois and the state of Hawaii are the 2 states in the U.S. where if you want to practice structural engineering, it doesn't matter what it is. There's not a PE involved. You get an SC and they have criteria for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. Currently, there's 55 jurisdictions that license engineers, and 18 of them have some form of structural licensure, if you will. Okay? So why do we want to do this? Any ideas? Why do we want to have a practice act? because we're smarter than everybody else, we're better, we're egotistical.
Keep out people that don't belong.
Okay?
Ego.
Ego? I don't know. I think we have a primary function in the world, and that's to protect the public, okay? And I think, I don't know if it's in later slides, but I'll just tell you, if you talk to the young folks that come out of taking the PE exam, ask them how many questions they had to answer about lateral loads, both wind or seismic. And what you're going to find out is, somewhat sadly, there's 2, maybe 3 questions, and they don't go into any kind of depth. And so what you're getting with somebody who's passed the PE exam is less than minimalistic knowledge about structures, okay? The test was written the way it was designed, the test is written by the criteria that's set there. But, you know, we've had to make some changes. So the deal is we want to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. What happens when something goes wrong, really wrong in structural engineering? Okay? People die. All right? Anybody here know the name Willie Edwards? Okay, I'll put this really close to home to you, not as close to you guys as it is to me. Berkman Plaza collapse killed Willie Edwards. He was a concrete finisher. Just doing his job, just came to work, doing the things he needed to do. He did not get to go home to his children that day. In part because of a shoring incident, and also in part because the structural engineer didn't do his job. Okay? And if you look at the FEPE newsletter, I think it was late last summer, the guy is in there, is listed, and you know, he's back in India now, and because that's the only way he would escape, you know, probably being in jail. So he had to, you know, he had to flee the country. But what are we protecting him from? I think you guys touched on a little while ago. Unqualified folks, inexperienced folks. You know, young people when they come up, some of them with 4 years, 5 years experience will get their PE license and then think, okay, I'm smart enough, I can open my own company right now. Well, there's some guys that are really smart that can do that and get away with it, but most of those guys usually work somewhere between 8 and 10 years with a more senior professional to really learn the trade. It's just difficult to learn it in 4 years. There's just so many iterations of what happens out there, so it's important. You guys, I usually bring it for demonstration purposes, but I wasn't about to lug the suitcase. You guys know how big ASC 7 was 15 years ago? How big is it today? Brand new one? Yeah. All right. You remember ACI 318 back in the day? One little volume, sometimes it was 2, but together they were pretty thin. Now look how big it is. How about the AISC code? And now there's almost 2 of them, right? There's the the 360, which is the basic code that we know, which is grown in size. And in addition to that, we have 341 for all the seismic stuff, which is a third again the size of So it's a lot of information we need to know, and it's all important. It's all important for us to know all that stuff because it makes us good at our jobs. It makes sure that we don't leave anything out, and it makes sure that we protect the public. If you're not staying current with that stuff, you're going to miss something important. Okay, and it just can't happen. And so what it will do is, obviously the costly failures. Okay, there's some other reasons we need to do this, and there's a couple of them here that I want to talk about. First of all, the decreased engineering education requirements. And I'm not saying this because of where I went to school or whatever. Most of you guys have been around for a while. When I graduated from college, I had taken 2 concrete design classes, 2 steel design classes, a pre-stress class, a wood class, in addition to statics, dynamics, mechanics of materials, geotechnical stuff that you learn. I can't tell you how many graduates I've talked to recently. They barely get out with 1 steel and 1 concrete, none of the others, and some of it's because they don't have the professors to teach it. In other places, it's just not a requirement. So the number of total credit hours has been reduced. So you're coming out with less education. Well, we can live with that because really school teaches young folks how to think, and we as professionals need to teach them how to apply what they think to buildings. I mean, that's kind of our job. How about the software that's being used these days, right? How many of you guys got young guys working for you? So, okay, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do this analysis, run it in RAM, come back and tell me the results. And then I want you to design it and put it down on the drawing. So they come back, and there's a 36-foot span, and the engineer comes in, and he's got some W12 by 31s in there, and he's trying to explain to me that for a floor beam, that that's, you know, the right size. And I said, well, how do you know that? He goes, well, because Ram told me. Nice. Okay, we can't have that, but people use it that way. You know, all of us in the room know that that's probably not a good rule of thumb, and it probably should have been a, you know, a deeper beam, probably an 18, maybe get over the heavy 14. But there's rules that you learn along the way that a young person just gets the computer results and says, well, this is right. You told me so. And then, you know, there's not as much plan review. Now, I think you guys down here have a pretty good system for plan review, so you're probably not as big an issue as elsewhere. But in many instances in the state, the building officials are relying on the engineer to seal the drawings. And, you know, I don't know how many companies y'all, you know, where you actually do in-house peer reviews before you submit drawings out, but sometimes time and money just doesn't allow for it like it used to back in the day. That all make sense? Questions on that? Okay. So what's the deal with separate licensing? Where is it? Well, these are the 17 states and 1 territory that have some form of SE licensure. So you can get an idea that it's pretty widespread. It's more West Coast than East Coast, but there is some stuff on the East Coast. I just realized the other day, I didn't even know it. About a year and a half ago, I've been registered in Massachusetts for most of my career. It's one of the earlier states that I got. And on my card, it actually says structural. I had no idea, so I went and looked it up, and they actually have a Title Act where you just told them what discipline you practiced in. They wrote that right on your license for you. No criteria for it, but you at least have that there. Okay?
So that's what you mean by some form of licensure?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. There's several different forms, and I'll go through those for you. Good question. The types of structures,